Okay, welcome back, all the participants of this workshop on decarbonizing the Indian transport sector. Now, in the post-lunch session of our presentation, we are here having Dr. Chila Venkata Ravishankar with us to deliver his presentation on the topic of decarbonizing Indian transport sector, highlighting the challenges, opportunities, and innovations. So, Dr. Ravi Shankar Chilla is a garbologist and waste systems planner with research interests in sustainability design, life cycle assessment, and residual resource engineering. Dr. Chila has decades of experience in teaching and research, currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Civil Engineering in MVGR College of Engineering, Vizianagaram. He holds a doctorate in civil engineering from IIT Kharagpur and Curtin University of Australia, as well as master's degree in environmental engineering from NIT Trichy in India. He has collaborated with dairy, aluminium, bioplastics, electronic industries, and offers consultancy services in the domain of life cycle analysis. He is also associated with city councils focusing on capacity building and strategy developments in waste management domain. He has 25 research articles to his credit. All of them are published in very reputed journals. Apart from his academic work, he is also passionately working towards volunteering and community involvement, particularly focusing on environmental sustainability and personality development. I welcome our alumni, Dr. Chila Venkata Ravishankar, to present his view on this topic.
Thank you, Rajarshi. With a very beautiful session in the morning, the context has been set. I hope the hunger for your body is satisfied, whereas the hunger for yourself, the knowledge is still continuing. So let's go on to the session where I'll be discussing on decarbonizing Indian transport sector, focusing on challenges, opportunities, and innovatives from an environmental perspective. So I'm not a transport person. I'm not a lawyer. I'm basically an environmental engineer with a domain knowledge in civil engineering. So let's go on. A slide. Yes. Why decarbonization? In the early morning in the session, you have seen this particular one. So focusing that there are n number of greenhouse gases coming out. And why do you need to focus on decarbonization? It is a man-made activity, which we call it as anthropogenic activity, where we are very much eager to improve or increase our materialistic things. So in that particular process, we have industrialized, we are increasing our economic standards, where unknowingly we have started excavating huge amount of raw materials, producing in industries. If you wish to know this particular one, watch the story of stuff in YouTube. So you'll have a very big picture on what is happening. And in air pollution, we have a concept called source, transport, receptor. Only when a receptor has a problem, then we look into the transport and source concepts, as simple as the pandemic, which we have seen. From the year 2009, there is a movie called Contingent. And in the year 2015, there were many articles which are published on coronavirus from the same lab of China. But still, we are not focusing on what has happened. And similarly, in the Indian scenario, also in the year 2018, we have Nipah virus. So with all the things we are running in the world, we are not very much careful there. In the year 2019, when coronavirus has come, we are alerted. We have looked at its transport, we have looked at its source, just because the receptor is at the problem. So who is this particular receptor? Both environment, human being also. So specifically, when human being is in the problem, the actual analysis or actual research starts on. So that is my perspective of decarbonization over here. Why? Because we are creating huge amount of problem. So we have to find solution. That's the definition of sustainable development even. Expanding our hands without compromising the needs of future generation. So with this particular briefing, let's move on to the next component. We have n number of protocols starting from 1972, where Paris Protocol, Kyoto Protocol has promised that the world will move on the climate change. And we, as a country, our governments have promised, many promises have been made, but can we really achieve it? Can we really achieve it? So you can see a beautiful mascot placed over there called Prakriti, Mission Life mascot, which has been released by the government of India. We'll see what is her role and goal, where we are transmitting, but let us see, can we really achieve it? Who has to do this particular one? So when the question has arisen, who is responsible for achieving Indian climate goals? So there is a big list being shown on the PowerPoint slide, starting from central government to different organizations in the government. These are all the people who are responsible for bringing this particular climate policies, implementing them, enforcing them. So that's where our Prakriti is very happy. So slowly, actions are being there, strategies are being developed, but are they being really implementable is the biggest question. When we will implement it, how do we implement it, when do we achieve our goals? But to that particular one, so if you just read a book or read a small brochure called Mission Life, Lifestyle for Environment, which has been released by Government of India 1 or 2 years back, there are 3 core shifts in our collective approach towards sustainability. So you can't put the responsibility on one person. We require the individuals to change. We require the systems to change. We require the total government to change its strategy. So that is where in that particular document, there are 3 domains which we placed and which is required to change. For example, I'll take a recently passed out intermediate student whose date of birth might be 2020. So after 30 years, he'll be in the year 2050. So he is the young professional who has to change it. So if you just see change in demand is the first component when we require. As a professional where I am there in the year 2020, by 2050, I'm a white-haired guy, retired, sitting or playing with my grandchildren. But a professional who is coming out, who was born in the year 2020, will become a young professional thinking about sustainability, thinking about his future generations with a lot of aspirations. Whereas the current generation or the students who are studying are the real game changers, are the task force for us in the year 2050. Why? Because these are the people who are graduating now are the real people who will be on the ground working. So it is the time for us to look at the demand. So it is the time for the people who are at the edge of retirement or who are active now at the age of 45 or 50, they have to create think tanks and task forces. Then changing the supply. You can see a large individual demand are expected gradually nudge industries and market. So if the current generation who are about to start their careers, if they start in supply chain, if they start in sustainability, if they start in decarbonization, so they'll start thinking the industry in a different direction. They'll break all the old shackles and they'll come as a new bamboo shoot. So first thing is what the changing in demand and changing in supply. So if policy has to change, the mindset has to be changed. If the mindset has to change, the generation which is coming, that is me, you, everyone, has to change our thought process, has to think in a sustainability way. So by the time we reach to our white-hairedness, then we can change policy. And meantime, let us change the demand and slowly we'll change the supply. So this is an integrated one where the symbiotic effect has to come into the picture. One goes hand in hand. And India, which is an agroeconomic country with a diversified population, diversified cultures. So looking at a whole, you don't require a global solution. You want local solution, which would become global plus local. So that should be a solution which has to be tailor-made to our regional locations. Why? Because North has a different system, South has a different system, Central India different, East and West different, North is different. So I can't bring a complete chaotic picture and with a single solution. So chaotic picture should have a chaotic solution. That means a discrete solution. So decarbonization for an Indian system should have a discrete solution. So that is where I start on. And let's give you a simple example. Let us introspect ourselves. So this is few components. There are 75 actions that are to be taken by an individual. So there, which are clustered under 7 themes. One theme is save energy. See, use public transport wherever possible. So are we really preferring that particular one? So there is a point that will prove that we are not preferring. Prefer CNG or EV vehicle or petrol or diesel vehicle, which is a debatable point. There are many papers, many articles, many discussions going on. What would be the fate of electric vehicle? We'll see shortly. Switch off vehicle engine at red lights and railway crossings. So we stay there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or minimum 1.5 minutes. So just switch off your engine, switch on that again. So we don't have huge amount of time to just switch off that particular engine for 1.5 minutes. But we speak on continuously about strategy planning and how everyone has to work on, and not say government itself. How an next person has to work on also we discuss. But it is very difficult for us to switch off and switch on. So it's not a blame game. It is the hard realistic fact. Even I never used to switch off. Now, after realizing the situation, started switching off. So let's change, be the change that we want to be. Use bicycles for local or short commute. Use carpooling with friends and colleagues. We don't have time. We don't have very urgent works that we do on just looking at 5 minutes is very, very important for us. So, but environment is also double important for us. So let's start the change. So that's what the Prakriti is telling to us continuously. So as an environmentalist, we'll be very, very much interested in looking out the overshoot day every year. So from the year 1970 till 2019, if you just see, the overshoot day is increasing. So typically it is the timeline which says that how much period of time that a natural resource will be available before consuming it by the overall population. That's the timeline that it says. So in 1970 until December 29, we have the natural resources. But you can see it came until July 29 in the year 2019. But luckily, since the COVID year has come, it has moved to the August 22nd. But now it rebounds back in the year 2021. So, and again, a debatable point here after you see that Earth's consumption, which is there. Everybody say India has a huge amount of population, but there you have to reduce your population. On the other side, if we see the countries with less population like US, Russia, Germany, Australia, they're consuming a lot number of resources. In the story of stuff, it says 4.5 kgs of material consumption will be there per day by a single citizen of US. Whereas in India, it is 0.7. So the most worry point of the first world countries is if India starts consuming at the rate of 4.5, it will be the biggest problem. So it should be a hand-in-hand solution. Like let's reduce or make our consumption at 0.7, population rate in an equilibrium position. Whereas the US has to reduce its consumption and their population is already in control, but they have to control the migrating population. That's the nexus that we have to bring over here. So next, what is the take-home message from the pandemic? So if you can just see this picture, so the economy has fallen down, human styles have come down, industrial sector has come down. It is only the residential sector which has pushed up, and very happily, environment has rejuvenated itself. So post-COVID, animals are able to come on to the livelihoods. Why? Because we have encroached their livelihoods and again say, elephants are coming onto the railway tracks. No, we have encroached their forests. So that's why elephants are coming on. So very beautifully, we can see that the environment has regenerated from during the pandemic time. So this is not a simple conclusion I am giving. There is a scientific study to prove that particular one. Let us see country-specific daily CO2 emissions in 2019 and 20, which has been published in the Nature. So country-wise, if you just see, the dark blue line is representing the emissions in the year 2020, and the solid and dotted lines in the other years, 2019. So you can see typically in the COVID time, in every country, the CO2 levels have drastically dropped. So Mother Nature has already given a solution for us. So pandemic year, that 1.5 year, what we have experienced, it is decarbonization of the Mother Nature itself. So it has critically followed that particular one. So we have solutions, but now we have to rethink them, research them and do. So let's go sector wise now. Country wise, you have seen. In the sector wise, if you see, In the power, there is less amount of reduction that you can see by because industries are running out. Industry is also in the same position. Residential, the consumption is the same. So we have produced almost an equal amount. Everybody is residing at home, work from home. So the emissions are there. And transport, key critical one is ground transport. See the emission reduction typically after the lockdown, especially during a March, April, May, June, that particular period, they have drastically dropped down. So this shows that the ground transportation has a huge impact. So this gives us a big platform to understand that the transport sector plays a very major role in decarbonization. So similarly, domestic aviation, all the flights are restricted. So see the beauty of reduction that is there. And similarly, international bunkers. So we are now focusing on the transportation sector. So the big picture scenario that we are seeing, that certainly reducing our transportation systems will help us in decarbonize. But how do we achieve it post-COVID is the biggest question. Again, we are back to normal situation. So now it is the time for us to discuss, think a lot, create huge amount of strategies to achieve this particular situation. That's what the take-home message from COVID. So database is source and sharing is growth. This is one of the key critical components that we are missing. I don't know how many of you have seen all these particular documents. Even I haven't seen the first top 5 as well as the 6th one. I haven't seen until I have started working in this particular project. The rest 4 ones which I've been started working on that particular, I've been looking into those 4 documents. But the top 5 and the one, this 6 particular documents, once we have started the project, I've been looking in. There is huge amount of data that is available in the internet. There are huge number of people who are working in this particular domain, but there is no consolidated database. Database is the only source that will help us in decarbonizing. Develop data sets. Post developing the data sets, what we should do? We should share that particular one. Without knowledge sharing, without networking, without capacity building, we cannot grow. Why? Because I don't know what is available in southern India, what is available in northern India if I am not sharing. In the olden days, we used to think crossing a hill, crossing a river, crossing a sea is very dangerous. But now with the invention of flights, the invention of ships, we are able to cross, we are able to gain knowledge, we are able to share each other, we are able to learn many things, where the innovation itself is, the meaning is to make our life with ease. So let's create a database, which is the source, and let's share that particular one for growth. So these are the 8 documents that I have been using for preparing this particular presentation. So the perspective that has been gained after analyzing this particular 8 documents is being presented. So let's go on to the global greenhouse gas emission by the transport sector. So if you see the CO2 emitters by economic component, you have electricity, heat production, transportation is 22% contributing by sector. And within the transportation, if you just look in, 40% is by mobiles, it's like personal users, and 34% is by vans. So almost 70% is being covered by domestic transport sector. So there is a huge requirement that we have to work on, both at domestic level, and rest is by the freight level, which we have to look in. So putting this particular context, if you see the global emissions from the transport by subsector, again at the year-wise levels, we are increasing. At the year 2020, which is the favorite year, Mother Nature has shown a solution how to decarbonize. So 2020 is a significant, and again we are increasing in the year 2021. But 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, which we are looking, is aiming to reach to this particular level where we will have 6 GT carbon dioxide by 2030. So we are aiming just to bring down from 1.8 degrees centigrade to 1.5, or we don't want to increase ourselves by 0.1 degree centigrade at the global level. If we wish to reduce that particular one, if we are willing to come down from 1.5 to 1.4 at global level, so just assume what should be the temperature reduction at the local level. And we can see a lot amount of heat waves coming out. And we can see the variation in the temperatures, and we speak a lot about greenhouse gas emission and climate change even from the school days. But what are the strategies that we are really implementing on the ground? Biggest challenges are there from multiple directions. It's not a single shot solution. It is an octopus solution that we have to bring. eight-legged solution. 8 sectors has to come into the picture. Multiple stakeholders have to come into the picture to solve this particular problem. Coming to the Indian context. So 2021 population data has to come. So we are not getting the databases yet to create the next level one. But yes, we are the first country now in the population, ranking 1. And see the urbanization that is happening with the economic standards that are developing. So we are increasing our personal comforts, we're using individual transports, etc. So there is one small edge. Sustainable urban mobility would include more public transport and pedestrian-friendly services in cities. So we see at Netherlands, Copenhagen models, we say that they are using more amount of pedestrian transport systems. They are cycling. We should shift towards that particular one. So if you can understand in the Indian scenario at 3 levels, high income, middle income, and lower income groups. So lower income group, certainly they are using 90% of the people will be using local transport, and most of the time people will be using cycles. There are few surveys which have been conducted. The middle income and high income, mostly you will see the personal transport systems, aviation systems. Whereas the central component, the middle class people, is a mixture of this particular situation. Where if you start comparing this with the Copenhagen model, where the economic standards are very high, where the income levels are very high, where we have to start working on our lower income people to feed them for their food, and middle income people for education and medicine. So these are the 3 things which are very, very critical: food, medicine, clothing. So if you can meet those particular needs and move to a next level, then we can concentrate on the other aspects like in the high income groups. So very, very typically in the Netherlands, you see, Sweden, you see, they have pushed their levels. In the SDG goals also, if you just see, I would think they are the ranking that has given. First 5 to 6 are zero hunger, education for all, gender equity. See, it is completely a social aspect which is bringing. So they're trying to improve your economic standards. They're trying to improve your lifestyles. Once when your well-being level is comfortable, then you can start thinking. Very simple. When we are working with communities in the waste management, when we went to a lower income group people, and we have started distributing the bins, and many of the city councils have started distributing. So after 3 months or 4 months, when we revisited, they're using it to store their cereals, store water and everything. Then we have asked, why are you not segregating? Very simply, they have told, we don't have proper facilities to store our water, store our cereals. And these 3 bins, which are very good quality bins, we can use them for this. And we have a secondary bin to throw them. So that's the attitude that we have when we don't meet our necessary requirements. So first, let's change that particular one slowly, and then we can strategize this or come up with a mixed or fused one for our Indian context. So that's the biggest challenge we have. And here it is critically written. This is a report by Terry. When we are speaking at more walking, less driving, more buses and less cars, when you say more buses, in India has only 1.2 buses per 1,000 people, but the global standard says 4. So where are we standing? We say our trains are crowded. We say our buses are crowded, but there is no proper infrastructure, no proper frequency. So I'm not a transport planning expert, but since this particular report is saying it is time for the transport planners, all the strategists who are working in the domain of transportation to come up and start speaking in this particular arena. What is my contribution in this particular one? You can see. So this is a favorite thing that every PhD student would love to read on their day 1. If I imagine the first circle as the knowledge of education, so slowly, 10th class, intermediate, BTech, masters. So I'm specialized in one domain. And slowly, once I come to a research level, I'll reach to the boundary of that particular knowledge. So where I'll start looking at what is a research gap. And that particular small domain, see, a big full of knowledge has become a very small domain, infinitesimally small, like a small grain in the ocean, where I have huge depth of ocean as my knowledge. So there I started, I might try to push that particular one, and I'll gain in some PhD, and I'm working in that particular domain, extending the boundary. So I can't alone individually extend the boundary. That is why in the capacity building, you can see a huge number of academic experts, industry experts, law people, biotechnology people, youngsters like us. So everybody has to come hand in hand and start contributing it to it. So let us look on where to start, who will participate. So since the ITF project is well connected with the GREET model, where we are working from well to pump and pump to wheel sectors, where the next speaker, Rajeshi, will be presenting our results, focusing on this particular vehicle type and fuel type results, which we have gained. So there are n number of aspects that we have to start. What are the available strategies to achieve this particular one? Then when you speak about this particular transportation, there are payments coming up, flexible payments and rigid payments. Are there sustainable materials for that particular one? Sustainable design, alternative materials, residual resources which are being used, like plastics can be used. How do you convert this wrap, recycled aggregates into that particular? A lot of thinking has to be done. Then is attitude and behavior. Social component is very, very important. We want humanists, socialists, economists to come into the picture. Alternative fuels, which we are looking out now, but there we want mechanical people in the production, biotechnology people has to come and say how do they produce. Then agriculture should come and tell how the agricultural activities has to be done, and give all the alternative fuels like bioethanol, which is generated from different crops after meeting the needs of food. So a lot of thinking is there. Infrastructure development. Now, after introducing electric vehicle, we don't have proper infrastructure to implement that particular one. We don't have basic infrastructure, as we have seen that we want 4 buses for every 1,000 people, but we have only 1.2. Same happened in COVID, but on war basis, we have increased our situation. So start thinking in a war basis, but strategies has to be developed with a short-term and long-term achievable goals, achievable strategies. Keep them that this is what I can achieve. It is just simply like I can give only from solid waste management. In the solid waste management rules, there are 26 goals that have been placed for city councils. And there is service level benchmarking in Swachh Bharat mission. You can see level of door-to-door collection. So if you just critically see, every city is achieving 98 to 100% of door-to-door collection. They have given the bins. But next to your house, everything gets mixed up in the same bin. It's the biggest problem. Daily morning, being a waste management person, although we divide it in our home, from the next day morning, I can see from the top of my house that it is getting mixed. Every time when I ask them, they simply say, sir, what can we do? A government has to give us the bins and separate. So from where does the government bring? So how does it come? So it has to be, proper thought process has to be given. So because 70% of the money goes in infrastructure. So if you are giving proper amount of materials, a simple truck, if you see the transportation plays a very major role in the waste management also. So you can see collection trucks will be there, transfer trucks will be there. You can, when the critically in the Indian scenario, if you see there will be no proper maintenance, which reduces their design life period. So if you wish to increase it, you should spend on operation and maintenance. And similarly, public agency has to take. Suppose if you are giving to a contractor, we can see a 10 people work which has to be done will be done by 3 to 4 people. So they'll not pay any attention, because their well-beingness is being completely reduced. So that is where the attitude and behavior, work-life culture, so many aspects have to be integrated over here. Collaborations. So industry, institute, and governance collaborations, where Professor Dubey has already spoken that US is well off now just because of this particular collaborations. So in India, can we see such sort of collaboration? Yes, they are existing. Yes, they are not existing, but not at a full extent. Not at a full extent. It depends upon who is expertise. Will they do that particular one? So we should put all the people onto the one board. It is not difficult to try, but we should start somewhere trying this particular one. And evidence-based policy research, where we'll be speaking from many of the experts in the upcoming sessions, how they have conducted their research, how they have brought strategies, especially in tomorrow's session. Professor Suresh will be speaking on different aspects in developing databases for us. And who has to participate? Institutes, which are research centers, industries, which are incubation hubs, governments are the knowledge partners. But because only the politicians, if they have will, then only they can implement that particular one. If I or you as an expert will go and tell them in an action of influence case. Don't tell any of the politician in a form of action of concern. Sir, I have this particular problem. They may not accept that particular one. Go tell them, if you implement this particular one, your SDG rankings will increase. You can create some 5,000 jobs over here. Your economic resources will increase. Show them the action of influence. Then certainly the politicians can do that particular one. I personally love politicians. Why? Because for the past 15 years, I can just see when a politician says something on a news feed, everybody is following him and doing those activities. When we speak lots and lots, I don't know how much reach it went. It is reaching, but not to the level of reach that a politician has done. So it is in turn the responsibility of the institute and industry and the government to tell that particular people that this is what you have to do. This is what you have to strategize so that you will benefit without compromising your needs. Such simple it is. So, so with all this, as I already said, I'm an environmental engineer. Speaking about decarbonization from the perspective of environmental engineering, we'll go and look at from a life cycle perspective. So in the morning session, you have looked on what are the different phases of life cycle assessment. So now we'll see very critical component in the life cycle assessment. It is not the impact assessment working. It is not the software. It is the system boundary which you are considering. It is the database which you are developing plays a very, 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 very major role. If you can just see the central portion inventory analysis, which I picture is representing, each and every sector in the solid waste management has been represented over here, where you can see the collection, transfer, and transport as two typical components. So generation database has to be there, waste characterization data sets, storage data sets, collection data sets, transfer data sets. Like each and every sector within that particular one requires an individual data set. So prior to that particular one, you should have a system boundary. You have to define yourself in your brain what exactly you're trying to do in this particular one. So if I wish to do a life cycle assessment for production of an alternative fuel, so I should look in the production. If I am looking at the manufacturing, I'll look at the manufacturing. If I'm looking at the utilization, I'll look at the utilization. Or if I'm looking at the full stretch, I have to look at that problem. Do I really have that particular amount of data? It requires huge amount of man hours. It requires huge amount of money flow. So, but it becomes very, 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 very critical. People are funding, especially European Union is funding a lot in this particular one, especially for the European context, to develop huge amount of databases. And slowly it has come into the India. Organizations like CIA, FICCI, and many other organizations are developing their own databases. And typically, with the experience of visiting lot number of industries, they have data. Electricity data is there, production data is there, process data is there, but not in the exact form how an LCA expert wants or practitioner wants. So suppose I want a process to process when it is going. So what is the amount of electricity that has been consumed? No, they don't have from X process to Y process. Why? Because they didn't have installed some energy meter. Nobody has installed some water meter. Small meters which cost very low. If you start including them or all these particular aspects, it will be very, very comfortable. Same way, a vehicle is there. Can I get the emission data from that particular vehicle? Can I do an innovation where I'll just fix a small sensor to the vehicle exhaust chute where automatic recording will be done? Can I do that particular one? So I have huge amount of innovation to be done in that particular aspect. So now you have a GPS. We know how much distance it is traveling. Vehicle operating systems are there, which are telling how much distance, how much fuel it is consuming. Same way, can someone come with that particular innovation? So small innovations are to be made. Data quality requirements plays a very, 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 very major role, right? Because once the technology has changed, the life cycle impacts will be changed. And if I remember in the year 2016, the impact that the methane that is contributing is only 25 times of carbon dioxide. But now it has increased it to 28 times. So automatically all my values will be varied. And typically if I'm using a data from Western European country or US countries, I am replicating that particular situation. Yes, LCA is accepted even in that particular situation, but you should think when you are interpreting that particular one. So we'll just look into the inventory set over here. all the time we look into this particular yellow components. Goal, prepare a database, data collection, validation, relating data, relating functional unit, data aggregation, defining, etc. But very important thing is not the thing which is there in yellow. It is the side component which is there. How do you prepare a data collection sheet? So it's as a person, when you are going to an industry, you should start using that particular data collection sheet. If you don't understand the industry properly, you can't collect the data sheet. So you should have a field visit. Very simple. It is like if now you're working in a transportation sector. Take a city, town. For example, we can take Karagapur, Kolkata, and a village. So the transportation modes completely vary. So how I should collect the data? It becomes a very, 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 very difficult task at that particular situation. So understand the ground reality. Do your reconnaissance survey or baseline survey. Then prepare that particular data. Once you collect that particular one, validate the data. How do you validate it? This is a multi-million-dollar question for us. We are struggling a lot in validating our data. Huge amount of time is wasted in that particular validation. But still, it is at most important. It is like a calibration curve in our experiment. So once a calibration curve is perfect, automatically you can go with that particular data. So do cross-check the validation. Validate per unit process. We'll see how the unit process will be looked in the next slide, but you should go step by step. At each and every step, you have to validate your data. Then you will fix a functional unit. This functional unit will act as a reference flow. So from input at the start point to the end point, when you have done the complete data collection, use this particular functional unit to normalize all your values and then validate it. So next is the calculation of inventory and the completed. Then the process remains same and it goes on cycling. So you can't collect your data in one single go. You go on collecting, revise it. It's an iterative process continuously. So you have to do this particular activity. The heart of life cycle analysis is inventory. If your inventory is right, if your inventory is good, then the accuracy of your results will increase. That's why we try to see that we get most amount of data from the primary sources, that the works which we do from the industries which we collect, rather than from the secondary sources like reports, etc. But as of now, in the Indian context, having zero data is better. Do you agree with my statement? Having zero data is better? No. So obviously use some data, get some result. Whether you use some European data, whether you use from US data, we have brain. Our human resources are there. You apply that particular one, get the resolutions, get the interventions, do the analysis, give your policies. So once that are ready, give the limitations also. Oh, I have used this particular data. So now you revise it. Someone has given a data, redo that particular activity. Why? Because it is easy to construct a house once the first floor is constructed. From foundation, I need not construct. I'll just go and put up the floor. So such simple you have to make. That is where the think tanks has to come, task force had to come in developing this particular one. So next is the system boundary, which I'm speaking from the previous session. Like you can see, raw material acquisition, production, uses different steps. So it is very generalized procedure. So to the sector that you are taking, as I shown you in the well to tank previous case, in the great model, each and every sector, you analyze it, you visualize it, understand those particular processes, meet the experts in that particular domain, sit with them, discuss with them, explain them what exactly you want. So that sort of discussion will slowly make them learn. Because most of the people who are working in the industry or in academia or anywhere, even you and me, after 10 to 15 years, will not be very happy with the technology. As if you can see, the newborn babies are very good with the smartphones. Even a 1 year or 1.5 year old baby can open up the phone, open up the YouTube, switch on their video and change their videos, skip their ads. Such the adaptability of the young born. But for us, it is very difficult to adopt that particular one. For our parents and for grandparents, it was like Greek and Latin. Slowly, they are also adopting. It takes time. So we should not get frustrated since our energy levels are very high. So we should tell them, right? Because certainly after 15 to 20 years, we'll be in that particular stage, fixed with a loop circling in the same activity. So we will not be ready to come out of our comfort zones. The same way a young person will come and tell to us at that particular time. So we may not try to adopt that particular one. So let's assume that particular situation now. Let's tell our 4 generations so that they'll understand slowly. They'll take time. But once they understand, once they taste this particular flavor, the ideas that come from them will change our situation. The perspective that those people will have in the big picture scenario will certainly make them ask lots and lot number of questions. This is with my personal experience. I have worked with lot number of industry people, academicians, and everything. When I started explaining them, initially they may ask lots of questions, but with lot of patience, if you slowly make them understand, they'll ask huge number of questions to you, where you'll get lots and lots of research questions. So we can work on them. So that should be the process that we should implement. And when I say unit process here, validation at each and every unit process, you should prepare a flowchart of this particular start, collect data at each unit process level, see whether the complete data is sufficient or not, and check that particular data then and there. Don't postpone it. Write down that particular one. Make notes when you are collecting the inventory database. Why? Because we can't remember all the 100% things. Why? Because our brain has a volatilizing activity. You forget. So make a notes. That's a very key important thing when you are going for inventory database collection. So, slowly the processes flow on. Already in the morning session, you are explained with all these things. Then is the impact. So typically, once you have collected all your data, then impact assessment. There are huge number of softwares. You have Excel sheets. You can develop your own activities. Nowadays, basically in the morning session, Professor Dubey is asking us to create think tanks to develop a lot of data tools, etc. Now there is an integration of tools like Python, optimization tools to this particular one, where computer science people are working in this particular domain. So I can remember S. Wolf. It is Jim Lewis in the University of North Carolina, I guess. He is one of the experts in solid waste management domain for LCA. So he has a software called S. Wolf. Now that particular traditional software is being converted to optimized S. Wolf using Python. So we can introduce something like Industry 4.0, Industry 5.0 activities in the traditional civil engineering activities, which comes only from the collaboration. But because I'm an end user applicant of LCA, I use a software. But on the behind side, it is a database. It is an architecture which has to be developed, where we have to take help from our computer science people. It requires huge amount of data, where we require statisticians, mathematicians. So all these people should come hand in hand and start creating a small tool. So once that particular tool is there, you have a waste data set, and there are huge number of climatologists, atmospheric people, geographers are working on this particular activity to develop IPCC emission norms, emission standards. Every year they release one standard. So we'll use that particular standards, and eco-invent databases and all the databases which are being developed will have them imbibed into that particular one. So a calculation of material compositions, all the unit processes which you are doing, all the inventory databases which you are developing will become a critical component in the first step. And then simple calculation of the inventory is the elementary exchange versus sub-process into material fraction. The elementary exchange is how much is the amount of pollutant that is coming. Small example, which the morning has been shown, that carbon dioxide and methane. 1 unit of carbon dioxide is 50 kgs over there, and 1 unit of methane with 25 is 25. Total 75 is coming. So such sort of characterizations we'll do, and finally we'll calculate the characterized impact. So this is the basic architecture of your impact assessment. Whichever software you are using, whichever impact category you are using, they have developed their own standards. They have developed their own statistical results specific to their countries. So do we really have an Indian characterized waste data set? No. We are slowly seeing few data sets coming over in the past 5 to 6 years. People have started working in this particular domain. And do we have Indian specific impact categories? No, not yet. Still, we are using European categories. Still, you are using world categories. If you see CML, recipe, impact 2002 plus, all these methods have been developed for either European countries or US countries or Australian countries. So there is a dear need for Indian scenario to develop our own impact categories, because climate change is accepted. It is common for all. But whether acidification potential is important to India, whether ozonization is important to India, whether human health is important to India. So this has to be started discussion within the Indian context. And similarly, our own impact factors. Indian context as a individual one. The dream of mine would be develop impact categories for each state. Why? Because each and every state has their different strategy for implementation. If you just see Karnataka has a very good transportation system, whether you can see few other states may not have very good one. Why? Because the strategy with which the local governments work is different. And few local locations like Visakhapatnam is very good at implementing solid waste management. Indore is very good in it's like implementing and investing in solid waste management. Whereas I can see Bhopal is very good at investing in the wastewater management. There are multiple cities who have their own strategies, who have their own plans in where they invest. So it plays a very, very, very important role at the policy level to give the local governments to have their own strategies. Decentralization of strategy making. So that helps a lot in developing this sort of impact assessments. Why? Because when you are developing a sustainability plan, when you are developing ESG plans, environment, social governance activities, each and every company has their own thought process. Everybody is now, there is one buzzterm called greenwashing. So in the name of ESG, in the name of sustainability, in the name of decarbonization, are we preparing a report that everything what we are doing is green? So every company is projecting to show them themselves that so that they'll tax benefits will be there, incentivizations will be there, or penalizations may not be there. So with this particular thought processes, they may report that they are very green, but actually on ground, they may not. So this is called greenwashing. So we should start thinking on this particular greenwashing activity, report exactly what is there. There is nothing wrong in telling that I am not doing it properly, because I don't have funding. I don't have necessary requirements to get that particular one. It will be like Namami Gange project that you can see. There is Red Alert Ganga. NGO National Geographic Channel has one documentary showing in Red Alert Ganga. So Namami Gange, we are implementing that particular one. See the activity process that is happening from Gangotri till West Bengal. Can't we do that particular one in a very good way? We have been implementing it. We have been achieving many activities. Start developing strategies in that particular way to implement. And finally, if heart is the life cycle inventory for life cycle analysis, brain is the interpretation. Brain is the interpretation. So you should start interpreting your results. It is very, very important. Do all the necessary checks: completeness, sensitivity, consistency, uncertainty. Do a lot of checks. Validate your data. Even though it is wrong, tell what is wrong. That is a limitation. And finally, report that particular one. Because once the report is there in hands, always remember LCA is only for decision making and policy making. Just like environmental impact assessment, it will not give you a definite value. It will give a number through which you can tell a value. Take some decision, which is better, which is more greener, which is more effort. It's like comparatively, which is good in achieving our climate goals. So with this broad context, we'll see in the sector of transportation and very focused to our ITF project, where we are trying to look in the alternative fuels. So diesel consumption, diesel retail sales by sector and segment in the Indian context. So diesel consumption in the transport sector, it is 87% and non-transport sector 13%. So trucks, we are using 64, buses 4%, wheelers, private cars. So you can see almost 70% in this particular one. So you have seen this particular slide in the session also. Just think, are we problem solving or problem shifting? So this is the thought process that we have to bring. Although diesel is polluting you at individual level, converting to an electricity is polluting at global level. So we have just problem shifted this particular one. But is it advisable to shift now? Then you have to go and ask Ministry of Renewable and New Energy Sources. Yes, we have dropped down from 67% in the coal consumption to 56% now. So we are shifting, slowly we are shifting. And what is our goal? Norway, where 95% of hydroelectric power stations are there. Can we achieve that particular situation? No, 100% no. But because every state cannot have an hydroelectric power. There are only few states which can afford in hydroelectric power. So then what is the alternative? What is the alternative energy source that we can create? So we should start thinking in that particular direction. Similarly, when you come to the alternative fuel, not every state can grow the cash crop. Right, the alternative crop which is required for producing biodiesel, every state cannot grow. So local partnership should be there. That's what the 17th goal of our SDGs. So let's start thinking in that particular direction. So every problem has a solution and every solution has a problem. So you can't completely solve any function, right? Because you go on adding constraint after constraint, constraint after constraint. So when you're preparing your problem statement, you are ranking your problems. This is the most prioritized constraint. You will solve it. Then you solve the second constraint. Then you solve the third constraint. So slowly over a period of time, we'll reach to an equilibrium position where the emission offsetting will be coming. Then we accept whether you are creating some pollution also, it is acceptable. Why? Because Mother Nature is regenerating at that particular situation. All the anthropogenic emissions will get reduced. So that's the state we want. Why? Because we have a carbon cycle where Mother Nature has created that particular one, and that balance has to be reached. That is our goal. So with the biodiesel as a fuel, so this is a report which has been discussing in this particular one. So there is a process flow chart for producing the biodiesel. There is a process for creating that particular one, where Rajarshi will be giving few insights onto that particular one. And there are first generation, second generation, third generation, and fourth generation biofuels which are coming over here. There are different processes for producing this biodiesel, which is an example for you. And you can see various feedstocks for different generations of biodiesel. Cashew nut, coconut, corn, cottonseed, hazelnut, mustard. When I started reading all these particular things, I guess most of the people love to eat all these particular ones. So that's what I said. You meet the basic requirements of the people. You produce for the people to eat. Then you use them for producing your biofuels. This is the edible oil generation. Then are non-edible ones, castor, crab, jatropha. So I guess jatropha is one of the most produced one in the Indian scenario. So there are different non-edible oils which are being used. And there are third generation which are waste oils. So waste cooking oil tomorrow, it's like day after tomorrow, you will be seeing Dr. Anush, who is a faculty in School of Infrastructure at IIT Bhubaneswar. Their team is working on using this particular waste cooking oil in bituminous payments, flexible payments. So how we are trying to use them, how we are reusing them can also be a critical one. So there are multiple aspects that are to be looked into different types of feedstocks. I'm not an agriculturist to go on deep and jump into this particular one, but certainly this is going to be one of the beautiful alternatives. So I'll show you the statistics why it is one of the beautiful ones. And there are many advantages and disadvantages for this particular one. As I told, for every problem, there is a solution, and for every solution, there is a problem. So there are benefits, there are limitations. So let's take all the benefits, let's solve all the limitations. Use all the benefits, solve all the limitations. So by combining one by one, industry, academia, and government should come hand in hand and solve all this. So from a life cycle perspective, when I see the fuel life cycle emissions, the emissions are not just alone coming from my vehicle, transport vehicle alone. From the extraction, I have a vehicle emission. From transportation of that particular extracted raw materials, I have emission. Then refining emissions are there. Then you are using them in the vehicle. So diesel, when it is coming, then it is distributed and it is being combusted. Same one, if you just see for a biodiesel, you have to do an agricultural activity. So the agricultural activity, certain amount is going for food, certain amount is going for my diesel production. That is where allocation procedures will come. 100% amount of energy, if I'm using in the land, it's like agricultural activity, how much amount of electricity has been used for food production, how much amount of energy is used for biodiesel production has to be allocated. So who will tell me that particular one? Where is the database for that one? So how much amount of water is used? how much amount of land cultivation has been done. So there is a huge amount of activity. So currently we are working on that particular 120 agricultural fields. We are studying that particular activity. So where a huge amount of database has been created for past 1.5 years. So only 40 farms we are able to visit out of those 120 farms. And even then, when you go and ask the local people where they're using common gen sets, they can't give you the data. A uneducated farmer cannot answer all the questions. So it is very difficult to collect the data. So there are a lot amount of data challenges when you go onto the field. Even when you go to a big farm, they use a lot amount of tractors. They can tell you this is the amount of diesel that I consume, but they don't tell you to which activity, how much amount of diesel is being consumed, how much amount of electricity they are consuming. They'll give you the electricity bill, which may not exclusively include that particular agricultural activities. They may use it for their general purposes also. So such minute level should be the data. So if you're not getting the very minute level data, it will be very difficult for your accuracy. So that doesn't mean that we'll stop here. So we collect whatever data we have, input that particular database. Next year, I'll tell them that is where the capacity building comes into the picture. Now I request them to collect the data in the way I want, or ask some funding personality to give some meters or some flow meters, some energy meters, so that I can install them within my farm itself and study that particular farm. Study one farm, then you can go for multiple farms. So get detailed data, small data, each and every one for your one farm. So spend more amount of time at the first stage, like 3 months, 4 months. So if it is 1 year, if it is a big project that you're doing, spend 3 years, collect huge amount of data, and then run the shows. The natural gas is a transportation fuel. So oil gas production, then oil gas transportation, crude oil. So this is where well to pump, what we are seeing is from oil gas production to the fuel pump, we'll be looking. From fuel pump to your vehicle, it is pump to wheel. And from full life cycle is well to wheel. I'll consider all the aspects that I'm having. So all the aspects. So your system boundary is defined specifically. If you want to understand only oil and gas production, put your system boundary only to oil and gas production. If your system boundary is complete oil to the wheel, that means wheel to wheel, then you can nullify something. If you won't get full amount of data. You can't spend the huge amount of energy just as you are spending in oil and gas production system boundary alone. So come up with the decision. That is where your goal and scope is to be defined very well. What exactly you want to tell the audience? What exactly you want to do as a policy? So if you are not very clear with that particular one, you can't write your limitations. Right? Because any policy paper, any strategy paper should tell limitation. This is what I have done. This is what the result that I have got. And these are the limitations that I have. If you are able to tell this particular one, then automatically my paper, or that means white paper or a discussion paper or a policy paper, will comfortably go. So that is where my politicians, my bureaucrats will accept that particular one. Because they'll be given a huge amount of exposure. There are huge amount of capacity building workshops done for our bureaucrats. They visit a lot of countries. They'll see a lot of fancy things being implemented. And they come and try to fit that particular one to our geographic condition, which may not be suitable solution for our one. So it is our duty to make them understand that particular aspects and go for localized, tailor-made activities. Very simple is like you can see in the incineration activity, which is there in the Denmark. There is an article called 100 Years of Incineration. In that particular one, you can see how stages have been developed to do incineration activity. Whereas now it's like the Denmark or a German person will come and start implementing that particular incineration plant. We have many incineration plants running, waste energy incineration plants, but they fail a lot. There are n number of conditions that are failing. The feedstock that they use in Denmark or Japan is way different from the feedstock that we are using. That doesn't mean that if you use this particular technology, it is well, and if we are using it in India, it is failing. So technology doesn't have a fault here. If technology has a fault, correct that particular fault. If the implementation is the fault, correct the implementation. That's where we remember the Japanese people saying, don't litter on the road at the first place. Why do you litter and start cleaning it? Don't litter it. As simple as once you board a flight and go into a foreign country, you'll split your own split into a bag and keep it into your car. You'll not split it to the road. You will not throw a bin. It's like plastic bottle on the road. You try to throw it in a dustbin. Why? Because you are enforced. Why don't you do it over here? Why do you ask for an enforcement? Is there? We go on discussing these particular things which are both sides of the coin. But let's do with self-discipline. Why Japanese are doing with self-discipline? Why don't we take that particular one? We have done it with self-discipline. Our exterior people have done it with self-discipline. Very beautifully, I'll always remember in the year 1990s, at the New York Square, plastic is one of the valuable invention. The plastic, New York Square, they have displayed that particular one. Everyone has appreciated it, and we started using plastic. And again, in the year 2008, same New York Square has said, let's go back to the jute bags. And suddenly we have remembered that New York Square has given plastic and we have used plastic. We are acquainted to that particular. Suddenly again changing back to jute bag is very, very difficult. Cost economics is there. I know 100 bags of plastic will come for 35 rupees, whereas 10 bags of jute will come for 100 rupees. Why a low middle and middle income families buy that particular one? So you can't enforce. Instead of enforcing, stop producing. No, you want money. Why do you produce at first place? Stop at the root cause. Can we stop it? There are a number of questions, debatable questions in this particular one. Same is being applied to the decarbonization of my transportation sector. Just use public transport. How many of you are ready? No, we want to go start at 8:30, reach by 9. Instead, whereas my public transportation will come at 8. So I have my own personal choices to use that particular. So let's start shifting slowly. That will make a big change. We'll see. These are all not what I'm explaining. These are all what you will see with some case studies which are downline. So typical life cycle technologies we have been looking. I will not go there. So vehicle sale over here in India, very beautifully I can see two-wheeler sale has been reduced in the year 2021. Passenger cars reduced, commercial vehicle, three-wheelers. So there is a reduction in the car. People are thinking. This is a data that has been given by Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers. But the same way when I see passenger transport activity in India by mode, in the year 2020, two-wheeler use has increased, railway has increased, buses, and see the car and aviation is also increasing slowly. Slowly we are shifting our transportation modes. And in the freight mode also it is shifting. And the emissions that you are looking. So slowly the emissions have been increased. Almost all in the passenger units, typically in the year 2020, the emissions have increased. Right? Because people have shifted to personal transportation modes in the year 2020. And the freight it has reduced. Freight it has reduced. That you can see the public transport domain has reduced, whereas the personal transport domain has increased. So there again, I can remember one example or there like, let's stop using single-use plastic. This was the slogan in the year 2018. That was the slogan in the World Environment Day. Stop single-use plastic or ban single-use plastic. But what has happened post-COVID? We are very fearful. So we have reintroduced a single-use plastic. So again, in the year 2023, what is the slogan for World Environment Day? Ban single-use plastic. We are again reintroducing that particular one. So once when we are in a difficult situation, let's bounce back and go. Again, once we are in normal condition, reintroduce that particular one. Such should be the strategies that we should have. By the year 2050, a significant year, when you see the limits to growth model, 2030 has been marked as one of the critical years. That's why we are aiming sustainable development goals for the year 2030, where population will be increasing and resources consumption will be increasing, pollution will be increasing, and natural resources will be depleting. And by 2050, we are hitting high. Certainly, all the third world countries are hitting high with the population. Then if you start consuming at a different rate, it will be very, very, very tough for us. So in the rail focused scenario, if you can just see with the current policies that we have, so we are aiming to reach by 2050 to almost 1.2 metric carbon tons per year. So what could be our strategies to reduce our emission reductions? Innovative urban planning, You should start planning your infrastructure properly. That is where our electric vehicle infrastructure development will be discussed by Professor Amrish Chandra. So we are trying to shift our complete modes from diesel vehicle to electric vehicle. Or the infrastructure is ready for electric vehicle? Question mark. And after 15 to 20 years, when you scrap your vehicles, because the design life of any vehicle is 15 years now, and we have a policy of motor vehicle, where you can see the policies being discussed by Professor Uday Shankar, fuel and motor vehicle policies. We have 15 years policy. After 15 years, you have to scrap it. So how many of you are scrapping that particular one? In foreign countries, they're scrapping. What happens to the aluminum in that? What happens to the plastic? What happens to the tires? Are we thinking of it? Similarly to all these innovative plants, suppose the lithium-ion batteries are there, solar panels are there. So how do we reuse them or recycle them after 15 to 20 years? Certainly, they're going to be a problem. So question marks have to be raised. So we should start thinking way beyond ahead. So and plan it. So innovative planning, transport planning is one section where people are working effectively, where GPS systems you can see. You can change your transport. We have watched many movies, Hollywood movies there where they have used the GPS systems, right? So let's start planning that. Modal shift. The mode of transport which you are using has to be shifted. That is one which is creating the huge amount of impact. That is where the picture that I have shown, increase public transport. Suppose, very simple, I can give you an example from Japan again. So if you miss a train, local train, immediately after 30 seconds, you'll have a train. Maximum within 45 seconds, you'll have a train. So see that public transport system that is there. There people are using less amount of personal vehicles, but there is a variation over there. Similarly with the Netherlands, with the Sweden, with Copenhagen, if you can just see, they're shifting their mode. Try to walk. Try to use a bicycle for shorter distances. So change our lifestyles. The mission life which is there, change that small things which will create huge impact on environment. From the environmental side only I can say. How do you mode shift? Let us see from the perspective of transportation people alone. And then improved efficiency. So a very simple example comes, if you wish to have the full length design life of your air conditioner operated between 22 to 26 degrees centigrade. Similarly, in every vehicle, it will say economy mode. 40 to 50 km/h is an economy mode. Change your oil, clean your carburetors. So there are small activities which you have to do to increase the life cycle of that particular vehicle. So which improves the efficiency of this particular one. It is as simple as you don't feed your body for multiple days, you will become weak. Same, the operation and maintenance is the key critical component, although it looks small. You can see, I'll show you a few examples where transportation sector is contributing to the minimum, but still they play a major role if you do huge amount of operation and maintenance. Then electrification, alternative fuels. So our project is much focused on this particular alternative fuels, which although looks a small number, but comfortably contributes in the rail mode. Same if I just look into the personal one, road focused scenario, the situations change. The model shift is the key critical one in rail focused scenario. In the road transport scenario, if you see, improved efficiency creates huge amount of difference. The vehicle maintenance is playing a very major role in decarbonizing, whereas the model shift is almost the third ranked one. Use of alternative fuel. That is the reason we are focusing on shifting from diesel to biodiesel. Improve your efficiency, stop your vehicle, clean your vehicle, process your vehicle. So see the amount that you are having. Like why we want to move to electric vehicle? It is just because less amount of operation and maintenances are there in that particular one. You need not change your oil. You need not go for regular car washing activities and everything, right? You just recharge your battery. But there are other aspects. But as of now, at this particular situation, shifting toward that particular one with an alternative fuel is a best option. So again, you made a statement with electrification plus alternative fuel is the best option. How? So, GHG emission for global typical medium-sized passenger, like we have taken fuel electricity production, fuel consumption, maintenance, battery maintenance, hydrogen tank manufacture, vehicle manufacture. So different scenarios were considered. You can see completely gasoline, biofuels, their life cycle emissions, biodiesel plus biofuel, natural gas plus biofuel. So there is 20-year global warming production for methane or there, because you'll be having that natural gas and biogas generation of methane. So plug-in hybrid, battery EV with renewable electricity. So in the case where we are showing you that particular card, diesel to electricity shift, that is what I'm saying, 20 to 2047 grid mix if we are having. So that particular grid mix will be very, very critical for us. We are shifting from 67 to 56, from 45 we may reach. But if we are shifting from coal to renewable electricity, still we will reduce the emissions. And similarly, fuel cells. So comfortably as on date, if you compare with our gasoline, diesel, natural gas, and plug-in hybrid, certainly battery EV vehicle with renewable electricity is one of the best options that we are having. It may not be good. It's like there might be some problems or limitations. Let's solve them. And similarly, if I just see for 40-ton truck trailer in 2021 and 2030 scenarios. So you can see diesel, biofuel, natural gas. So this is 2021 scenario, 2030 scenario. Certainly, I'm reducing that particular. I'm trying to improve my systems, improve my standards for a period of time by achieving sustainable goals. So these are the basis for all my conclusions. But similarly, different countries we will see now. Europe, United States, China, and India. Fuel electricity projection, fuel consumption, maintenance, battery manufacturer, vehicle manufacturer for electric vehicle, and current policies versus Paris Agreement. That is with our electricity component. We said we'll phase down, will not phase out. Why? Because after 100 years of utilization of the coal, European countries and US countries are comfortably saying that now phase out of the coal. Why? Because they have a huge amount of natural resources. They have countries with they shifted. They have taken 100 years of time. It is just as simple as like our big brother telling the younger brother to do whatever he has done. It is very difficult. The age grows constantly, and we have to face the same situations, but we have innovativeness. So India, being a younger brother in this particular situation, will adapt to the situations very comfortably by learning from our big brothers. So that should be a very good scenario. But you can see if we start utilizing this particular with the current policies by 2030, so you'll slowly come down. There is a reduction, but not a drastic reduction. Not a drastic reduction. Not a drastic reduction in our Indian context. Why? Because the current energy mix of Indian scenario is equivalent to the 2016 current energy mix of China. So 5 years back, whatever China has the energy mix, that is equivalent to the Indian energy mix. So slowly we are moving on. And as I said, a big country, a diversified country, if you start looking from state to state wise, an individual reports, if you bring from state to state wise, it has a different context. Whereas as India as a whole, if you are looking, it has a different context. So when we are developing solutions specific to the Indian context, let's start moving from central level to state level, from state level to local level. Let's compare Mumbai with Denmark. Let's compare the Delhi with Denmark. So see the population size, see the modes that we are changing, and slowly learn lessons from Denmark, implement it in Delhi, from Delhi learn and implement it in Kharagpur, from Kharagpur implement it into a rural locality. So there should be a shift slowly. It will not happen overnight. So with the big picture scenario, so there are few LCA works that have been done by our laboratory. So typically Professor Brajesh Kumar and Professor R.K. Sen. So biotechnology department, Professor R.K. Sen also will be discussing on the biofuel perspectives in the Indian context in the upcoming days. So they worked on, it's like typically Gitanjali has worked on life cycle assessment of microalgae production. So the laboratory level data has been collected and they have developed. And here you can see transportation, although it is not showing a big one, the cultivation shows a very big component. Flue gas compression has shown big, but transportation is contributing. Transportation, even though it is very fine, small amount, it is contributing. So then you have to take care of that particular one. And similarly, one more study in the biofuels we have done with the yeast-based biodiesel and biocrude production comparison has been done. So you can do a comparative study between the different components. So even here also they have used the laboratory data to do this particular one. And similarly, different tracks. So you have, we'll use railway tracks. Some concrete tracks are there, ballastless tracks, ballast tracks. You can see all the railway tracks were filled with natural aggregate. If you fill with concrete, what is the variation? If you improve the service life, what is the variation? A nice study has been done. So these are the opportunities that you have. So I can't go in detail to each and every activity because full studies are not done by me. But a perspective that I'm giving you, this is an opportunity that all the domain experts who are working in this particular areas should start thinking in this particular direction, sustainable aspect, life cycle aspect. So start including one objective into this particular one, which helps you out in converting all the experimental results that you have done into a database form. And that database is one critical contribution of your PhD. Don't assume that people will not accept that particular one. But as a practitioners of LCA, we know how important it is. Slowly, people will start accepting that particular one. Slowly, it is the responsibility of the PhD scholar to make people understand that this is also an research output. So slowly, once it increases, automatically everybody will say, oh, I know this is how it will be a research input. After 15 to 20 years, it will become a generalized activity. Everybody will start it like a literature review. So such simple it should become. The aim is by the time I will become white-haired, so almost 20 years down the lane, I should listen, oh, database generation, it's like a literature review. It's not a research output now. So, but now it is a research output. So do certainly include them. Do start thinking from in this particular perspective, which is one of the biggest opportunities that we have for the Indian databases. But developing huge amount of data sets. So let's collaborate and contribute. And one activity, one LCA work which we have done. Basically, I'm a part of this particular work where we try to use life cycle assessment for determining an alternative building material, where ferrochrome slag is used for replacing. So there, our system boundary, if you just see, comparison is being done with a natural aggregate versus ferrochrome slag aggregate in using the concrete. So at every junction, you can see there is transportation. Cement has to be transported, aggregate has to be transported. So at every location, you will see transport. Raw material to the consumer, wherever you are using, transport is only the mode. So we have used the complete transportation scenarios over here. We have found that transportation, this ash colored one is the transportation. So you can see the contribution to the global warming. Let's take global warming. So although you can see a different cement is contributing more, then ferrochrome slag contributing more, natural coarse aggregate is contributing, there is a composition for transportation also being contributed at every stage. So every one of us should think in this particular direction, where you see transportation is one of the key critical components in your projects across your supply chains. Then start developing that particular data, give it to a higher, it's like researchers who are working in that particular domain. So they can develop a very, very, very specific data, huge amount of data. Once they have developed very good amount of data, in turn, you can use it, symbiotic effect. So then we can amplify our result. Then after doing that, we have done a sensitivity analysis based on distance, based on the transportation mode. So when you are working on the distance is one of the key critical ones. The lead distances will vary. So suppose I am at IIT Kharagpur. Suppose the construction plant or aggregate plant is there at 50 kilometers, I can take. Something might be at 100 kilometers, or some far away distance from 1500 kilometers it may come. So it's at your project level, it might be very, very, very small. But when you go to an industry level, I may get a product all the way from China through sea mode, and from air mode, from rail mode. So it's a very difficult situation. When the freight comes into the picture, the scenarios will change. That's what we are trying to do in the ABB project also. Once we look at we are looking at the end of life, all the products which are there are not just only sourced from India. They are being sourced from European countries. They are sourced from Asian countries. So different modes of transportation are there. So once different modes of transportation comes into the picture, then you can see a huge amount of difference and a key role being played by the transportation sector. And same, The ferrochrome slag, which is there, we have tried to see the transportation mode variation from road to rail. Why railways become a very good component for our freight transport system? Why? Because the amount of emissions that are coming from the railways will be reduced. It will transport huge amount of quantity by using less amount of fuel. The freight load which you are using will be varied. That's why recently you can see even the trucks are being transported by rail. Huge number of 50 to 60 trucks were transported using the rail. Instead of all the 50 trucks being traveling from a far away distance, they're transported in a single train. That's the beauty. Small innovations you do, small shifts that we do will certainly bring decarbonization. So we have been discussing huge amount at the planning level, payment level, and everything. To reduce completely 1 degree, there are few more activities that we have to do. Operation and maintenance of our payments. The payment temperature, with the temperatures rising, flexible payment automatically at 47 degrees, you can see that it will become soft in nature. So you have to start improving the longevity of your payments. Infrastructure development plays one role. Then durability aspects. Because why we have to increase the durability aspect? The rider who is riding should not face a difficulty. So you should improve your driving activities. Then tree plantation is one of the key critical ones. We have written one article combating climate change. It's typically combating urban heat island using different mitigation measures. One is longevity of the previous 2 slides, longevity of the payment, and second one is creating tree shadings. So where are the trees now? Where are the micro level gardens now? Suppose IIT Kharagpur, if you just see 30 years back, it is like a forest. Now, if you see there is huge amount of destruction, it's like deforestation. So trees have reduced. Local temperatures have increased. Once this local temperature has increased, global temperatures are increasing. There is it's like a reflection activity that is being taken. Heat wave will come, fall onto a building, gets reflected. Slowly, heat will be developed. Greenhouse gas effect is coming. Global warming effect, greenhouse gas effect is coming, and we are becoming pans. Jungles and jungles of concrete are being created. So that's why you see when you just come from Kharagpur into IIT, certainly there is a 1 to 1.5 degree temperature reduction. So if you just go to a company, park or anything where huge amount of trees are there, you feel so comfortable. Thermal comfort of our body also plays a very major role. So from that particular level to a global level, we have to start thinking. So if you go, why we are trying to book AC tickets? Now, why don't we travel in a sleeper class? Previously, it is not the way. People used to prefer sleeper classes. Slowly, all the people are trying to shift to AC classes. That's why we have trains called Garib Raths, right? So with lower amount of cost, trains are being provided. So why we are shifting? It is just because we ourselves are increasing the temperature. It is man-made activity. It is anthropogenic activity. It's not world or climate is not. It's like Mother Nature is not changing it. So if we are changing it to our comforts, let's start thinking. Let's change our policies, right? Let's change our strategies. So typically in the life cycle assessment activity, when we are using, you have to plan different policy scenarios. Based on the policy scenarios with your business as usual current scenario, compare different aspects. So Professor Munish Chandal will be discussing such sort of policy aspects in his lecture shortly. It's like in the upcoming days. So then this is my area. One of my favorite works that I've done in my PhD, landfill mining of soil-like material with on-site sorting for land application. So the interesting part over here is the transportation will play a major role. So although you will not find transportation again in this particular results, but typically we have used 50 kilometer, 100 kilometer distance to transport the soil-like material and deposit it critically over there. So any sector, if you just see, transportation plays a major role. So once you have completely done your life cycle analysis, what is the next step? So sustainability assessment. The detailed sustainability assessment framework will be discussed by Professor Wahidul Biswas on 22nd June. So this is a slide from his activity. So he's one of my supervisors. So very huge amount of thought process should be there in the sustainability assessment, where we had triple bottom line aspects. So the triple bottom line will be social, environment, and economy. For the complete time, I've been discussing only on the environment. The life cycle assessment, which I'm speaking until now, is only focused on environment. So if you wish any of the industry person to implement environment and social, you should tell him how efficient his economy is. All the industries work on economic bottom line, but now they're shifting. For the past 5 years, we have been looking that they're shifting from economic to environmental, slowly balancing them. That is where ESG is playing a very major role. Impact assessment is playing a very major role. Corporates are now shifting towards that particular one, but it will take time. Certainly, it will take time. Why? Because nobody wants to lose their economic benefit. So that's why let's give them time. Let's the researchers go hand in hand with those corporates. Tell them what is beneficial. Tell them what is the action of influence, not the action of concern. And slowly it can be achieved. So to achieve that particular one, if you have developed one life cycle assessment using environmental, find out what are the alternatives. To those particular alternatives, calculate the cost, and then you will calculate the social scores. It is a very simple survey. I can use the word very simple survey, but when you conduct it, it is one of the biggest tasks, right? Survey might be simple, but preparing for that particular survey is very, very, very huge. Choose the academic domain, choose the industry domain, choose the government domain using a snowball technique. What is the snowball technique in theory of planning? Planned behavior means, so if you don't know where to start, go on searching and find one particular contact. Ask that particular contact to give another contact. Then go from there, Slowly, as just like how a snowball, when it rolls, gathers its mass. Same way, start from one contact. So ask them. So use set, reset. So slowly you'll get the answers, but it will take time. But any project when you are implementing, so the techno-economic which you are doing to that particular one includes small social components, like OECD has given well-being index, happiness index. There are indexes readily available. Take those particular indexes as your standards. Go and meet people. Use them at the initial stages. You can use weighted averages for that particular one. Likert scales you can use, just like a qualitative measure which can be converted into quantitative one. Say strongly agree to strongly disagree, give 1 to 7 scale to all those particular questions. Ask them, do the survey. And as morning also Professor Dubey was discussing, you use multiple questions where you have to check whether the person is giving a right perspective or not. Because we know that surveys when we run, we randomly give that particular option. Like 15 minutes, it is very, very difficult for us to sit and give 100% agreed. Because it will be boring. You are not domain expert. But still, if you are willing to do that particular survey, keep 3 or 4 questions as dummy questions or repetitive questions. So that particular questions, and there are a number of softwares. To analyze that particular one. Results that once they come out in that Likert form, they'll be weighted, and there are SEM and there are multiple softwares which can do, where management people will use all this particular one, and humanities people will use all probit logic techniques. So you can combine with those particular people and develop a score. LCA score comes from your impact category. Economic, we have present worth method, annualized method, standard modes, calculation are there for that particular one. Codes are available. So combine them and give a score like this. So go to any of the bureaucrats, any of the policy makers with this sort of colored diagram, with all the options that are there. Tell him, if you implement this particular one, your environmental concern or environmental score will go in this particular direction. This is the option. So if you just show them this particular one picture, done, you'll be funded. You'll be given huge amount of funds there. But how do I get this particular single diagram? It is years of hard work. This one is not just simply from 1 year. It is one PhD's work. So it has been 3 years work which has been done. So it will take time. Certainly invest time, which will give you huge amount of products and byproducts. So a simple example is the bamboo tree. Plant a seed of a bamboo, it will not come out immediately. It will take some months of time, and then it will shoot out very high. So it will go deep down to collect the water even after many number of years. So such should be our life cycle thinking, where we are planting the task force seeds and think engine seeds such way that we'll go deep down in our Indian databases. So develop huge amount of databases over a period of time. By 2030 or 2035, by within 7 years or 15 years, we are certainly going to create our huge number of databases. So capacity building plays a very, very major role. And there are huge number of opportunities in the transportation sector. So each and every component in the transportation sector has huge opportunity. You can see payment, maintenance, vehicle, fuel, modal choice, other infrastructure. Each and every segment is one research wing within the transportation for lot number of people to work on and to create databases. And from the LCA perspective, which will in turn contribute to the decarbonization. So from the vehicle side, you have multiple components, and there are two relevant softwares, greenhouse regulated emissions model, which is GREET. And then from the payment side, raw materials, construction, removed materials. So that is where our solid waste management and circular engineering comes into the picture also. So we have Palette and Ecor. There are two softwares, specific softwares. We can use general softwares also. And similarly, in the fuels mode, we have GREET and FEC models. And as I've shown you from the feedstock level to the utilization level, you can have multiple number of scenarios, include lot number of stakeholders who are coming into this particular one, develop data sets. Overall, take-home message is we have huge amount of areas of application in this particular one: innovative urban planning, alternative fuels, modal shift, electrification, reporting. So all the rail and road mode sectors which I have shown, those are all the areas of application where we have to start working on. So development of life cycle inventory databases is the heart of this particular decarbonization activities for developing all our policies, strategies, etc. And specific to the impact assessment, we have limited development of characterization models specific to India. So completeness and cumulative effects of the chemicals are not there. Normalization and weighted factors has to come for the specific Indian situation. We have this particular one, but specific to our local conditions. So to Indian context, to our regional context, to our state level context, we have to develop. And same interpretations has to come, development, policy development. Rebound effects is one important aspect, reporting and rebound effects. Greenwashing is the activity which I'm speaking on reporting issues. So don't give that I'm doing very good. Give a good progress report that I'm bad, but I'll improve. So give a scope for learning, give us constructive learning, unlearn and learn. So then only we will go. That's the key thing for our reporting. And rebound effects. So as I said, it's like electric vehicle may be a good option now, but after 10 to 15 years, it may change. So certainly every problem has a solution and every solution has a problem. Let's start thinking in that particular direction and develop solutions so that we'll achieve our climate goals by 2050 and 2070. Thank you. So I guess I'm on time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was really insightful. And you gave
Two questions. One second. This one, no? This one is there. Okay. Yeah. So we have a question from Rahil Chauhan, Dr. Ravi for insight. I have one question. How do you uncertain for lab scale tripled experiments? Very interesting question. I would prefer not triplicated experiments. It's like I would love to see the results being replicated and reproduced in numbers. But if you are unable to do it, that particular one, why? Because doing the same experiment for multiple amount of times is required. And that is where the validation of the results will come into the picture. And certainly if the sample size is increasing, by my normal distribution variance will be good, which will help me in uncertainty analysis. So whether I'm going for a log normal distribution or whether I'm going for normal distribution, there are multiple number of distributions that are there in my uncertainty analysis. It's like if we look into the CIMA Pro, so there will be a tab which will say where we prefer to use undefined. That means there is no distribution with us. So if we have a distribution, certainly if we say it is a normal distribution curve, we'll click on normal distribution and we'll input the standard deviation over there, which will become very, very helpful for us. So it is not simply like triplicated also will give me a standard deviation. We can start with that particular one. But if we have time, let's redo that particular experiment. That means reproduce the result, simple reproduce and replicate. So multiple times you do that, you increase your sample size. That will be a very good option. If it is not there, if time doesn't permit, replicate is always good. Something is better than nothing. The next question. Binod, how to do completeness check while preparing life cycle inventory? There is a pedigree tree already been developed, well developed checks are there. So we can use pedigree trees. They're readily available in that particular one. They're well defined. So that's what we have to slowly understand this particular process. We have to slowly implement it. So going to that particular level, if we start telling use that pedigree tree, use all that particular samples, if we start pressing with all the validation checks at the young level, nobody will start using the LCA. So as a practitioner, we'll verify them, whether they are fitting in them or not into the inventory, like during the interpretation, but will not cause trouble to the industry people or who are at the very young age. That's what it's like. You handhold your child until they walk properly, and finally they'll start leading it. So same way now at the Indian level, going on to a full length stretch of LCA where we check each and every small component from a micro level point of view may not create huge amount of capacity building. So, but if someone is ready to use, there are pedigree trees. So there are checks which are readily available and we can use them comfortably. So any other questions? No, if there are no questions, I can comfortably close the session. Thank you.